Hi everybody, welcome to the channel. We finally got that HP Platinum power supply in one piece. Almost seems like it took a miracle for it to happen. You'll know why in a minute. And we got a lot of questions that came up on the last video about the HP power supplies. So hopefully we'll get those questions answered today in this video. And lastly, mining is going strong. So if you're trying to expand your mining rig, this is probably one of the things you're going to need in order to accomplish that. So let's get to it. Let's get started. We'll start off with, why did I say that HP power supply getting here in one piece was a big deal? And here's your answer. As you can see here, some damage. Not only the actual frame of it, which is probably touching some components inside, but then the card is even bent. And who knows, behind the scenes what's happening, or a solder joint that's probably loose or what have you. A couple more pictures of it. And the reason that it came in that condition is because they stuck it in an envelope which has very small bubble wrap in it, then dropped it into another envelope that has bubble wrap, and thought, hey, that's a great way to ship it. So the answer is no, not a great way to ship it. Sent that one back. Then from another vendor, same thing. You can see here the handle's broken off, or I should say broken, not off. A random dent, a dent here. Again, here's the envelope. He put it in a little bit bigger bubble wrap, but really that bubble wrap isn't going to have any chance if it's sitting inside of a plastic envelope. And then lastly, you can see the frame is really bent. Now, who wants to put their expensive mining gear, or for that matter, a server, which is what these are intended for, with a power supply that might have some internal damage, and who knows what it's going to do. So, between ordering those two, trying to get them in, and finally getting a third vendor to send the right one, who actually sent it inside of 2 boxes, which was great, is what it took just to get this video started. So let's start with just taking a quick look at mining. We're going to go to what to mine. And this is configured with my 12 card rig. If you haven't seen the mining rig in a while, it's got a lot of changes to it. So much for a project of just having 2 cards in a rig and experimenting to see if it's profitable. I think we passed that up a little bit. But anyway, these numbers are up nice and high. We're here in the $50 a day potential. A little bit lower on some of these Kryptonite coins. This one's up there with Sumo Coin. So mining in general is really strong at the moment. The craze is on. Video cards are impossible to get a hold of and overpriced everywhere. So that mining is strong, and little details like having power for your mining rig is becoming more critical, including easier ways to do what we're doing with less equipment. This HP power supply is pretty much the answer to that. So let's get right to the questions and answers. Start off with the first question that was pretty common from the last video. How do you connect the HP power supply to the video cards? And the answer is breakout boards. Now, you probably saw these in the last video. Maybe we didn't get into the details as much, so we're just going to kind of zoom in on these things and take a quick look. Now, on the left here, we've got what's considered revision 1 of the breakout board. It's got a power switch, which I always leave on. And you slide this into the common slot of the HP power supply. And on the back here, you've got these 6-pin PCIe cables, or I should say PCIe ports, which you can plug 6-pin cables into. And what's interesting is they came out with the revision 2 over here on the right side. And revision 2 actually has one thing that I don't like, which has got this small 4-pin connector. And I'm not sure really what I would use the 4-pin connector for, but at the same time, it's taken away a 6-pin connector, which is what I'm looking for. So right now we've got, on the revision 1s, you've got 10. And when you buy these, you're usually getting 10 cables. And then on revision 2, you're a little bit short. You've only got 9 because of this extra port. So something to be aware of when you're trying to order these things on eBay or wherever you're ordering them from is if you wanted the one with all 10 ports, then you've got to make sure you get the revision 1 versus the revision 2. Other than that, I'm not really seeing anything different on the board, either on the front or the back. So I'm taking an assumption that there's really been no major changes, just the fact that it has the one port. Moving on to the second question, how do you turn all the power supplies on at the same time? That's a pretty easy answer. We start off with the power coming out of the wall, and it's going into our kilowatt at the moment. And then the kilowatt gets plugged into by the small blue smart socket that we're using here. And then lastly, we're plugging in our surge protector into that. So depending on where you're putting your kilowatt to measure, you may have a different sequence. But bottom line is you've got the 3 power supplies that are going into the surge protector. Surge protector goes into this smart socket, and the smart socket gives us a couple of capabilities. One is it allows us to turn on and off the rig with a button that's at the top. 2, it's monitoring the amount of power consumption, and it's off by a little bit compared to the kilowatt, but it's acceptable. It just gives you a general range so that if you're not in the office and you're looking at the rig, you can tell from the amount of power it's using that there's something wrong or not. And then 3, of course, is that you are accessing it remotely via your cell phone, and you're able to power cycle it if something goes wrong and things of that nature. So the way that we're turning them all on and off is through the blue smart socket. Now, you have the ability to do the same thing right from the APC surge protector, and you could just turn it on and off, and that'll accomplish the same thing, but you don't get that remote functionality that we wanted. Now, one other thing that might be of value is that the people who make the actual kilowatt have come out with a different version, as you can see here in the middle, which is one that's got the kilowatt data on it right here while being a surge protector at the same time. So this could be maybe a potential option for you. I think this one might be a little bit pricey. I haven't really compared them fairly at the moment, but that would be the third option. Still not giving you the remote capability that the little smart socket does, but that would be if you didn't really need that, functionality, and we're just looking to turn it on and off right here with a kind of kill switch. Another question is, how are you measuring power usage? Now, most of you do see the kilowatt in the videos, and you're able to see the numbers. And we talked about for a second now, when we were talking about the small smart socket, that it also gives us a method of measuring. So if we look here, we've got the kilowatt, and as an example, it's got a little digital display here. You can see the volts, the amps, the watts, and the hertz, which to me isn't that important, and kilowatt hour usage. Now this is just information that's live. You're getting the data as it's coming across the wire, how much power you're consuming at that very moment, but you've got no historical data. And so the use of the smart socket lets us have the ability to go here, and this is actual data that's from the rig. And as you can see, the power's been going up, and that's because every so often we were adding a card, and before you know it, we're at the 12 cards that we're at today. So this gives you some historical data, lets you know your working time, your daily average, your weekly consumption. You can do this by day, by week, by month. So this is a great way to have long-term power monitoring and of course statistical data if you wanted to reference how much money you're saving because you tweaked your cards a different way and you're undervolting or doing some different things to reduce your power usage, versus just, hey, it's using what it's using and I'm not paying attention to those details, which that can work too. All right, let's get on to the next question. How are you powering the riser cards? So this one's another pretty easy one. We're actually doing it in 2 ways at the moment. As you can see here, the red has a SATA power connector, and we were using the SATA originally because we figured we'd run something off of the original main power supply, in this case, which is the Seasonic on the rig, and use that for the motherboard and the risers, and then everything else off the HP was going to be about the video cards. I've taken a turn, and I think it's going to be better if we just run the 6-pin connectors for a couple reasons. One is the SATA connector kind of slides off a little bit easy. If you're moving things on the rig, you might be able to just dislodge it a tiny bit and then have a quick issue that you'll have to troubleshoot, versus the 6-pin, which is going to kind of snap in and give you more of a secure connection. And then the other thing is you can utilize the 6-pin from the video card 100% through the HP, and that way you've got only the HP power supplies powering all the video cards, and you can probably buy a pretty small high-end power supply just to run the motherboard. That way everything about the video card is done through the Hewlett-Packard power supplies. So that's the new method that I'm trying out. And there's another riser that's out. There's actually a couple different risers out there that have 3 or 4 different power connectors. They give you the Molex, they give you the SATA, they give you the 6-pin. And so you'll have a lot of options if you get those, because if maybe you don't have another SATA cable at the time or another Molex cable at the time, maybe you've got a 6-pin and you can just drop it in there. So that's how we're powering the risers. At the moment is a combination of the SATA coming off of the main power supply for the motherboard, and then from the HP using the 6-pin blue risers. So I think that's about all the questions that I saw before. Hopefully I've answered all those questions in a decent way. And if maybe you've got a question that you haven't seen here, go ahead and feel free to drop that question down below in the comments. Maybe look in the previous video comments, as it might be there, and hopefully we can get those questions answered. So let's jump into the video now. I'm going to mute the video so we don't have to hear whatever I came up with at the time, and kind of keep the background noise out of it. And at one point we will turn on the volume so we could hear it and listen to the 1200 watt get a little bit noisy. But we start off with the 1200 watt power supply. As you can see, we've got the part numbers there. And basically there's a couple things you can do besides looking up the part number. You can see that the blue socket or outlet port is one way to tell that it's a Platinum power supply. Then if you look at the sticker, a little bit blurry there, I apologize for the camera. You can see 94% there, and then of course 1200 watts. 94% tells us that it's Platinum as well. So that's our quick way to tell that it's a Platinum power supply. Of course, it's got to be in your hands to tell that, so that's the answer there. And right now we're mining an algorithm which is Kryptonite. So this is going to be our lower power consumption setting. Right now there's 11 cards on the rig in the video, and it's pumping around 1220 watts pretty consistently, you know, a little up and down as far as the range that you're seeing. And if you haven't seen the rig in a while, there's been a lot of changes. As you can see there, we've got a second tier with some more video cards on it. And the back here will go down. Actually, we'll take a look at the motherboard first. And the motherboard is the Asus B250 Mining Expert. That saved us a lot of headaches in troubleshooting what's going on. Over here, we've got one of the HP power supplies with the breakout board. There's that LED that it has on there, and you can see the cables going up to the video cards. And here's another one of the HP power supplies down below. And it took both of these to power up the video cards. And on the Seasonic power supply, which we mentioned before is a gold power supply, it's powering the risers and the motherboard. So if you want to see more about the mining rig, we'll have a video coming out with an update. And in that video, we talk about profitability, we talk about different things. But right now, we're going to focus on the power usage. So I'm going to freeze it right there. So what we've done is we've gotten our measurement of about 1220, since the number goes up and down, under Kryptonite. And we're going to kind of crank it up a bit, and we're going to change the gear over to Ethereum, and we're going to measure what Ethereum gets. And once we've done that, then we're going to go ahead and flip over to the 1200 watt power supply. Okay, so we started up Ethereum. And let's give that a few seconds to get going. We'll make sure that we're getting everything running. And as you can hear that beep in the background, this is an excellent time for me to bring up a point about power. When you exceed 15 amps, in this particular case, this kilowatt's going to start beeping at you because it's only rated at about 15 amps. So I will probably have to find something a little bit more powerful, considering we're trying to put together a rig that's going to run maybe 13 cards versus the 11 that are running on it right now. But because of heat and electricity usage, and of course the amperage here, we've been running kryptonite type coins and have been very successful from a profit standpoint. You should check those videos out. They're going to show some crazy numbers in the past month or so. But in the meantime, let's focus on what we're looking for, which is that 1812 watts of usage. And we're going to see what happens when we go platinum, how much we can bring that down. Now remember that 750 on the top row is already platinum technically, and the bottom 750 from HP is a gold. So that's the one that we're going to focus on changing out, and maybe throwing a couple more items onto the platinum away from the Seasonic, which is also a gold power supply. It's a good power supply, but it's gold versus platinum. So we've got the 1822, 1820. We'll just call it 1820. That's a close enough number. And let me just take a look at something here. So as you can see, we're pushing 16 amps. And of course, that's more than a 15 amp circuit's supposed to handle. So that's where it's at. We're going to hit stop. We're going to do some labor on the rig, and then we'll come right back. All right, so we're running the 1200 watt power supply mixed in with the 750, which is also platinum, and the 850 Seasonic. And we'll run through the video, and I'll keep talking. So we've got this on kryptonite. As you can see, the numbers actually dropped a little bit, not a huge number. Remember, we were running gold and platinum already on the 2 HPs that we had in the machine, and we just added one platinum, taking away one gold. So we're not expecting a huge jump. Here, we're seeing some lows that are probably about 10 to 15 watts lower, and it is not reaching quite as high. So I'm going to say it's a small percentage of around 10% more efficient. But if you're going to be buying a power supply from the beginning, then get the platinum. It'll be worth it. Depending on your cash flow, if you're trying to spend less money up front, the gold is definitely cheaper. If you're willing to spend a little bit up front and save in the long run, the platinum's going to save you more money. Remember that power costs tend to go up about 8% every year as well. Of course, that depends on where you live. But with that increase in cost, you'll be saving that entire time. So if you can afford a little bit more up front of the platinum power supply over the gold power supply, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to jump out of this seeing about a 10% savings, and we're going to head over to the next video that was taken from the rig, and we're going to look at what Ethereum did when we put that on the 1200 watt power supply. All right, so I'm going to let the video play so you could hear the 1200 get a little bit noisy, and let the video kind of tell you some of the information going on there, and then we'll stop it at the appropriate time. Well, as you can hear, we're still on Ethereum. You hear the beeps going on, so you know we're using the higher power. And you might hear an extra whining noise, which is the HP 1200 power supply spinning. And they are pretty loud in general on these HPs. When you first start them up on a server, I mean, they sound like a jet airplane. In this case, because we're using so much power, it seems like it's going to stay at that volume. And that's pretty annoying compared to what the 750s were doing. But we are putting a different load on this one. So I may have to break the rig down and measure the power just going to the 1200 with however many cards it is, which I think is somewhere about 8 or 9. I think we put 3 or 4 onto the Seasonic. Now our power consumption went up, but I believe that that's because we went onto the Seasonic Gold away from the HP Gold. So I think that there may be a little bit more efficiency out of the HP than we realized. And of course, there wasn't much of a difference in the gold and the bronze as far as like a huge number difference. So I think that bottom line is stick with gold if that's what you have versus getting platinum. If you're trying to get away from a standard desktop / gaming PC power supply, then for sure, the HPs work, and it's a matter of just getting the right size. I'm going to break this down and figure out how much power we're actually feeding through that 1200, so we can get one more note in, because I'm getting the feeling that maybe it's better to manage it in, let's say, 6s and put 6 cards on a 750 and have each 750 running in that efficient zone. Hopefully not whining like this one does, because that's a pretty annoying amount of noise when the overall rig was relatively quiet. And again, depending on where you have it, it may or may not make a difference to you. So if this is just sitting in some garage and you can have it loud, this might not bother you, but this is pretty annoying for the office room that we have this in. All right, so we saw an increase in power. I do believe that's because we put more load on the Seasonic, took it away from the HP Platinum that was there. Excuse me. We were basically trying to put everything onto the 1200 and really get that up into the 80 to 90% range of the 1200. But it seems like the 1200 is a little bit more sensitive to the heat and therefore started blowing that fan at a higher RPM really quickly. So let's jump on to the next part of the video where we see what happens after the changes that we made. All right, so we wired it up a different way. We put the 750 Platinum back. We've got the 1200 watt Platinum. We've split the load a little differently so that the HP doesn't have as many cards, or I should say the HP 1200 doesn't have as many cards, and we don't have any cards directly plugged into the Seasonic, only the risers. And the reason for that is we've got to get some different cables that are maybe longer and that have splitters in order to put different risers onto the video cards. But that's okay. I mean, right now it's giving some use to the Seasonic 850, and then you're splitting the load of the video cards between the other two HPs. And as you can see with the 1790, it did go down. It still goes above 1800, but a little bit lower, maybe about 7 to 8% in this particular case, versus the Kryptonite, which was getting closer to 10, 12% of a savings. But again, we're comparing something that already had platinum and that had gold, both from HP. And now we did is replace one of the 750s with another platinum. So, the percentage of power savings isn't huge. And I'm going to stick to my original theory, which is if you can afford it, buy the platinum, especially if you're getting a power supply from scratch and you don't have one, or maybe you got into mining, you started off with some random power supply and you've just been using it, but now you're realizing you're adding a couple more cards and you want to try to be a little more efficient on your power consumption, definitely buy the platinum. If you've got something that's gold already, probably not worth the change. Yes, maybe in the long run it is, but I would say, I would leave it at gold and get a platinum for the next rig. So that pretty much sums up what I think about the HP power supplies. And what I would say is if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them on the comment section down below. If you've seen anything that I might have said wrong, please let me know. Never want to really steer anybody in the wrong direction. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Please share the video with people that you think would like it, and subscribe to the channel. Our other videos get into topics like profitability. We've got some pretty decent spreadsheets that help us figure out what we're making per day based on several coins that we're mining at any given time, because of what to mine, because of maybe some coins that we've done some research on and found profitability to be higher than what to mine has. And so, the videos have a lot of valuable information, and you should check them out. You also get to see within the video some of the new things we did on the mining rig, which you got a quick view of the rig, but there's a lot of details on the rig that we didn't talk about today. There's some organizational things that we did that B250 Mining Expert Board from ASUS has been a real blessing in making it easier to manage mining card issues. The HPs being in there kind of modified the rig and added a second tier for the extra video cards. So just a lot of stuff going on, sharing the experience, and hopefully giving you some help along the way, making your rig a little bit easier to deal with. Anyway, I appreciate you listening to the video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it again. Don't forget about hitting that subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one.